CPU speed is a topic you will absolutely see on the A+ exam, so let's talk about it here. And in this short video, I want to just give you the overall view of what you need to know for the exam. But first of all, let's answer the simple question, what exactly is CPU? Now, of course, CPU means Central Processing Unit. And what exactly is CPU speed? Well, CPU speed is what everybody knows the most about. It's what everybody looks at first when they go to buy a new computer. And that is, how fast is the CPU? What's the rating? Is it 2 gigahertz? Is it 2.3? Is it 1.8? And generally, everybody wants the fastest, okay? Well, as it turns out, what that really means is the amount of clock cycles per second that the CPU can perform. Now, what is a clock cycle? Well, if you'll think of the CPU kind of as the leader of the band, okay? And the members of the band are the graphics system, the memory system, the interface system, keyboard, mouse, all that stuff. And so to get all this band working together and playing together, we need a drummer, right? And just like the drummer sets the time, and the guitar players and keyboard players and everybody sticks together based on that one common time, that's exactly what the clock cycles do. And so CPUs, different ones, can run different clock cycles. And these are measured in hertz. And so 1 hertz means 1 clock cycle can be completed in 1 second. Now, this used to be measured by instructions per second. There was almost a 1-to-1 relationship between the number of instructions per second. Generally, it was 1 per second. And then, they can multiply them up and so forth. And that's not exactly true anymore because of architecture changes, advances in technology and processors and so forth. So now, the best way to really describe this is clock cycles per second, because some processors can handle more than 1 instruction at a time. So 1 megahertz means 1,000 cycles in 1 second. Now keep in mind, the first PC that came out way back in the very early 1980s, the IBM 3270 desktop PC, ran at 4.77 megahertz. All right, 1 gigahertz means 1 billion cycles in 1 second. And as you know, most of our computers now are around 1.8 gigahertz, 2.3 gigahertz, that sort of thing. And they just keep getting faster and faster. Now here's the question. You need to watch for this on the exam. Is a 2 gigahertz CPU twice as fast as a 1 gigahertz CPU? And boys and girls, the correct answer is not necessarily. If I put a 200 horsepower engine in your car, and then we take it out and put a 400 horsepower engine, does that mean your car goes twice as fast? Well, no, not necessarily. It could be geared different. It could be some sort of limitation on the suspension, all those sort of things, driver ability. And so those same things happen here. A 2 gigahertz processor generally will be faster than a 1 gigahertz, but not necessarily twice as fast. And the general rule is, if you double the speed of the processor, you're probably going to get somewhere around 30 to 40% of the performance of that, okay? Now, CPU architecture can make a significant difference, and so you have to always make sure that you're comparing, apples to apples, as they say, to make sure that you're going to get it. Now, the true way to understand the processing power of a CPU is to benchmark it, is to compare it against some sort of known standard and see how many instructions per second and so forth you're actually getting out of the thing, okay? Now, multiple core processors can execute simultaneous instructions within a single clock cycle, so that means they're going to run faster. So if you've got a 1 gigahertz CPU that's dual core and a 2 gigahertz CPU that's single core, probably in a lot of situations that 1 gigahertz is going to feel at least as fast, maybe even a little faster than the 2 gigahertz. But again, that all depends on what you're doing with it. So another thing is, a CPU's cache can significantly affect the speed. And just think of cache as RAM memory that's just for the CPU. It's actually built into the CPU. We'll talk about that later. But this can also significantly affect speed. So CPU speed, watch for it on the exam. It's going to be in megahertz, or what we use now, gigahertz. And also, you can't really necessarily say that a 2 gigahertz is twice as fast as a 1 gigahertz. Very, very rarely will that happen. A lot of other things come into play here. But just make sure CPU speed makes sense to you, and you should be able to do pretty well on the exam with these questions.